Thanks for having me.
I suppose e-meet you is probably the best way to put it. Thanks to Dawn Lester.
Me. Yes, yes. Dawn Lester, yes, our mutual friend Dawn, wonderful, wonderful friend, writer,
Yeah.
uh, researcher,
Yeah, she's a good thinker.
lecturer, also, a real
We
good
have some
networker.
really good calls, and we've got a nice friendship. We speak well, I say we speak a lot. We have long conversations with gaps between them.
Right, right. Yeah, she and I will go for periods of time too, and then suddenly we're texting back and forth quite a bit. So,
That's nice.
yeah.
That's nice. I must order your book after the summer because I've got a big. I was looking. I was going to order, and I thought I've got about 30 books in there to read before I even get to that. So I'll leave that till after the summer. But it looks very intriguing, and Dawn was very impressed with it. In fact, she left you the first review, didn't she?
She left one of the first. Yeah,
Yeah.
she was one of the authorial reviews that the book received. We were just talking about the UK before coming on air here,
Oh yeah.
and a UK publication, which is now going out of business after many years. Indie Shaman magazine, if you're familiar with that.
No.
June Kent's little nice little magazine. They published a review of Get Out of Here Alive in their final edition, which just came out here in April. So
Okay.
I I was in the last edition.
Excellent. Excellent. That might actually be an interesting topic to talk about. Although I can't because I haven't read the book, I don't really know. But from the bits I've picked up in a conversation with Dawn, your thoughts on reality and really the contents of your book, because I think that would be an interesting thing for my audience.
Yeah, the probably the biggest sticking point that the book presents for people who are otherwise, pretty free-thinking folks, and let's say the alternative health crowd or
Hmm.
holistic crowd, is that I really question any bedrock in science or the scientific method that's not a product of the observer effect and ultimately just an aspect of our imagination one way or another, either individually or collectively.
Hmm.
And it's not to say that the quote unquote realities that we experience don't have seemingly real effects. Obviously, they do. It's that they are created by something that we typically downplay, which is the power of consciousness, the imagination, the
Hmm.
focus of our attention, and that is a force of nature, as it were, that can be hijacked, molded, used to rescript realities, to trap us in a prison planet, a matrix-like reality. And these are all ideas that I explore in my new book.
Hmm. That is interesting because I felt for such a very long time that I don't think reality is real per se, but the experience of it is. It feels real.
Absolutely. So it's not meant to downplay people's experience or
Hmm.
their suffering or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
just that what the reason this is in this particular phenomenon is so important is that we can't expect to change a construct that is produced by energy and consciousness by not working at the energy and consciousness level. And yet,
Exactly.
so many people are doing exactly that and expecting it to change something meaningful.
Yeah.
And I, in defense of my point, will simply cite history.
Hmm.
All of the revolutions and all of the social movements and all of the thises and that's have basically produced bunk in the long run, in my estimation. And
They've
people might
produced
say,
bloodshed.
"Oh, there has been emancipation and there's been this or that or whatever."
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? I mean, what I see is, uh, compartmentalization on steroids, niches inside niches. You have to be this little tiny person inside a little tiny box to be free.
Yeah.
That's where we are in the world right now.
Yeah. But that makes perfect sense, Sol, because if you trap people on the outside, they'll never go on the inside to do the work that's necessary to change the outside. So you've got them.
You've got them. So the follow-up ebook to Get Out of Here Alive, which I'm about to release on my Substack as an exclusive,
Hmm.
is is out through the indoor.
Yep, I like the idea of that. It's funny because for many years now, I've been doing more and more work on the inside, so I get a better change on the outside. Because I know you can't affect the outside at all. It doesn't matter what you do.
It's the truth,
You wear yourself out in the end.
Well, I got onto this from a scientific perspective, and I will kind of put that in quotes because science is just another application of the observer effect, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah. Well, good
Um,
science is.
Yeah, good science. Well, actually, any science is because it can create outcomes that seem real,
Hmm.
like some critter that can come and get you and take you out in the night, and into your whatever. So
Yeah.
these can seem very real to people who experience phenomena seemingly related to those things, and
Yes.
then we can argue about them ad nauseum and ad infinitum.
Hmm.
Um, where was I going with that, though? I was going to say.
You were talking about your follow-up book.
Oh well, the it was I was going to say something about the scientific method here.
Yes.
It'll have to come back around to me. I kind of lost it.
It'll come.
You know, it'll come when it comes.
Okay.
Um,
One of the things it strikes me as it's a bit like, and I mean, this is such a flippant example, but it's a bit like playing a video game and thinking that you're actually going to control the character inside the game unless you're controlling it through the game. So the only way you can change the outcome of the game is to change what you're doing with the character. And
yeah,
that strikes me
I
as what
like
I'm doing with
that.
my life.
I like that because when you also internalize that in kind of a meta moment, then you are the character.
Yeah.
It's
But you're either the player or you're in the game. If you're in the game, you're not influencing. You have to influence the game as the player of the game.
as the player, but you can achieve a position of consciousness. And I actually teach this in something called pragmalchemy, which is the series of kind of alchemical bodywork techniques that I have introduced on my Substack,
Hmm.
where you can be very aware of being both the player and
Hmm.
the played, and
Yes.
you can be both at one time, and that actually creates a kind of non-dual consciousness where you just see yourself on a continuum of identity, which is really, really cool. And it's very, very empowering because, for example, you can go into like an alchemical meditation that I teach, a type of meditation. I don't like to use that word a lot because it has so much baggage attached to it.
I've been
But
meditating every day for 50 something years now.
so in any case, you can go in and visualize yourself in the matrix, in the construct,
Hmm.
in a room that you can create for this purpose.
Hmm.
And you can visualize your dream body as being healed, younger, more robust. I know that, you're an anti-aging mastery guru here. And so this is the kind of thing, this is how I come at it.
Yeah.
What that can do is basically when you're doing that, you're actually strengthening your aura. Your dream
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
is your etheric blueprint. And then that blueprint can feed back epigenetically into your reality and signal, things to change basically for the better. Maybe you switch some things off, turn some things on, whatever.
Mm.
But that blueprint can have really profound effects. So just by seeing yourself in the game and imagining that character that is you being healthier, then gives back to the player you real changes.
Yes. Yeah, that reminds me of what was that book I read? Oh, it was a part of a book, I Am That I Am. It was I can't remember the name of the book it was in, but it's all very similar. Neville Goddard stuff was very similar to that as well. Is that when you are being very declarative in your visualizations and your statements you're making of yourself, you start to affect how you experience your life and the reality of your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I
Yeah,
quote Neville at least two or three times in this book.
yeah,
So definitely someone who's on a very, very similar train of thought,
yeah.
where really it's this idea that, well, in this new ebook, which is a kind of addendum or introduction to Get Out of Here Alive,
Mm,
I basically say that we are Imagineers in training in school here. We are gods of the imagination, realizing that that's what we are and learning
mm,
how to master that ability.
yeah.
And that's very Neville Goddard-esque.
Yes, yeah. I'd go along with that. That's been my experience in my life because you can either build yourself up or you can smash yourself down into the ground with what you believe to be true about yourself and your life.
Right, exactly, exactly. The, I know I was looking through your website before we came on and
Which
you
one?
know,
Because
um,
there's one that's normal, there's one that's got a lot more stuff in it.
yeah, it was the principles.
Okay, have you had a look at For the Love of Truth?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
No.
for the love of truth.co.uk is where everything else is. The principles is a much more kind of uh, sculpted and more for the kind of general reader. The other one's got a whole bunch of other stuff in it, and there's probably
Oh,
700 odd
yeah,
pages
in
of
this
books and
inverted
references in there.
reality, we find ourselves in everything.
That's right.
Everything is
Yeah,
up. I love that. That's very
yeah,
similar to how I've to
yeah.
where where I am with
But you
all
know,
of it.
it made me laugh. There was a bit I read somewhere of yours where you said, if you want to know what's going on, do 180 degrees and look the other way. I'm paraphrasing it. I agree with that so much. I laughed out loud because I've said that to so many people. Just look the other way and you'll see a better picture of what's probably going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I
Yeah,
think that's in my little book, Musings
yeah,
from a Small Island, which has some of my paintings in it. So maybe
yes,
that's where you saw
yeah.
that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people think I'm joking, and
No,
and being humorous, but actually the point is quite serious. That you'll
yeah,
get a much more accurate uh, picture of what's going on behind the scenes if you just
yeah.
reverse everything about 180 degrees.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just, if the magician's moving his hand, you want to be looking at the other hand.
Well, that's it. That's it, And then the idea that just take the food pyramid, just sort
Yeah,
of turn it on its head. I mean, it works perfectly. It's that it actually is healthy.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
more or less, right? So, yeah, that's really funny. So I'm glad we're on the same wavelength. I know Don said, you guys will absolutely just completely, grok where each other's coming from.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the nice thing is that we've got it'll be the same with some other really cool people I know as well, like you, that you don't have the same view of the territory, but you've got a view, and then we can use that to triangulate a position more accurately. As we've got more observer positions, you get a better idea of what's really going on.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I always, feel like I learn a lot when I talk with people in these interviews. I know,
Yeah.
tend to be, they have, of late, they've tended to be kind of about me and my work because of this new book. But I
Yes.
always, really it was having conversations with people for several months in the lead up to and the aftermath of publishing this book that I had enough transcripts that I was able to go back in
Yeah.
to, and look at that material, and it generated a whole other ebook out of just what I had written.
Yeah.
It was like boom, there it is. And that all happened in dialogue, which I really like. That it feels very Aquarian, very horizontal,
Hmm.
as opposed to vertical, top down. Like you're saying, there's a triangulation effect where we're getting multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Instead of this myopia, it's more like an Argus-eyed reality. We can look at it through many different viewpoints.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, because one of the things I've noticed that certainly since that whole nonsense that happened in 2020, was it 2020? Yeah, it was 2020. People became so polarized, and it became very difficult to have sensible adult conversations with people that you could walk away from going, I'd never thought about that. It normally ended up with a lot of people just being a fucking argument because they're so close-minded and compartmentalized about what they're thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I will take some responsibility for contributing to some of that in my own way. I was really in a different place. I think I wanted the terrain thing to be an absolute truth as opposed to just a perspective,
Yep.
and so I kind of argued just because everything seemed so dire, and I'm like, God, what, and I got sick years ago. What actually destroyed my health when I was in my 20s was some travel recommendations, if you get my drift, when I was and
Okay.
so it wrecked me. And so here I'm like living in this Chiron return from hell, with all of this medical intervention stuff going on
Yep.
that really nearly killed me, and then I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years who, have had similar experiences. So here they are, like upping the ante and making something more more harmful. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I think, I took this really seriously, and was fighting the good fight. And it took a few other experiences to kind of like wake me up to my kind of cult-like behavior in a way. And I ended
Hmm.
up writing a book called The World, Cult, and You. And it's all about this phenomenon of your consciousness, your attention being hijacked for often seemingly good causes, but really you're always being played against another cause, and those people think it's a good cause. And then all of that conflict creates this human energy of emotion
Thank
that's
you. Thank you. Thank you.
it's
Thank you.
being
Yeah.
harvested. And I propose that it's being harvested by something like a mental parasite that has hijacked our construct.
That's really interesting you say that because I disconnected myself from the fight because I realized what I was doing and what it was. And then, as I said, I've been meditating every day now for 50 years, and I can do some really interesting things within myself with that just because of the amount of time I've been doing it.
Of course.
I get a sense of a very unusual kind of darkness energy, and whatever it is, I can't probe it, I can't get near it because it retreats. But there is something there that requires that level of focus, but it doesn't seem to function as well. And this sounds really weird if you're listening to this, most people I would think. It doesn't seem to function well if you come at it because I just observe. I don't care. I don't feel fear. I'm just there observing and noticing what I'm feeling and what I'm sensing. And it's weird. It's not like anything else I've come across, but it's definitely there.
That is that is really interesting. Well, in Get Out of Here Alive, I do write about this thing as an actual type of entity, a
Hmm.
creature from the realm of the unconscious, from
Hmm.
time space, from the Nahual, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
the astral plane. It's got, you could put a lot of different terminology on what this other world is. It's just
Yeah.
basically an extension of this world. We think we're separate from it, but really we're just in a
No.
slowed down version of it. It's all, to me, it's all just a really big dream. But I write about, where this thing apparently came from. I plug it in as the serpent in the garden in the mythology in the
That makes
Bible.
sense. Yep.
It offers the apple of its consciousness to our pre-conscious species. And when I say pre-conscious, I mean that we just at one point in time, I believe we lived in a state of the unconscious where
Mm.
we processed with a collective mind that had vast reservoirs of power and knowledge,
Hmm.
but we didn't experience ourselves individually in the way that we wanted to. We wanted to eat of the tree of knowledge
Yeah.
and to know more about ourselves. And so the poisoned apple basically was, okay, you can do that. This was this creature, right? This being, which I call the dragon in my new book.
Mm.
I'm using Joseph Campbell's
Hmm.
sort of hero's journey motif.
Yes.
So we get to eat of that and we get to use its conscious mind as our own, but at the expense of submerging our conscious minds into a place where we can barely access them. It's very, very difficult. So we're separated from ourselves. We're dualized.
Hmm.
I believe in the my understanding, that's literally when our brains broke in or split into hemispheres.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
write about all of this in my new book. It's really, really bizarre
Yeah.
to even think about these things, but it's the consciousness that changes the biology. I mean,
Yep.
this is why Lipton writes about the biology of belief, because
Yep.
ultimately it's a product of, he actually called that book before he published it, The Biology of Consciousness.
All
But
right.
his
Okay.
publishers thought that belief would sell better.
Hmm.
It's very, very funny. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm monologuing a little bit, but you got me stirred up.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to poke and prod and ask questions to get. I want to learn. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, well, it's I'm still learning about all this stuff too. I was
Hmm.
writing about this this being. I know where I was going with this. So this being, which I'm calling the dragon, or in the world cult to you, I call it the great parasite.
Hmm.
It basically, when we think with our conscious minds, we're thinking with its mind.
Yeah.
It's not mind controlling us. It is the absentee owner of our own conscious minds.
Yeah.
So meditation and other forms of energy work and projectionist types of alchemical work
Hmm.
are extremely powerful, because eventually they can make this being leave your mind,
Hmm.
and then you can think in the silence of your own being.
Yeah.
That is what is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It can also be freaky. It can be like a dark night of the soul on its own,
Hmm.
because when you're that alone suddenly after a lifetime of having something else talking in your head,
Yeah.
It can just be devastating for a little while, but then usually your life begins to improve by leaps and bounds
Yeah.
when you go there. And it's usually doesn't happen all at once, from what I can understand from other people's stories. It usually you have momentary experiences of it. These build up over time, but there will come a day when it's just gone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been my experience. I still get very occasionally, if something happens and I start to feel a tiny bit of stress about something, there's some chatter that comes, but I recognize it as not being me because it doesn't sound like the way I think, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, I basically, I can just say, look, I know that's not me. So whatever you need to do, get on with it and then fuck off.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So that
the other thing I tend to do as well, Sol, is I try and think less because I think thinking is a trap, and I try and feel more that I'm engaging the rest of my body and the whole of my being in the process I want to go through, as opposed to being trapped up here all the time.
Man, that we're so resonant here. I have a whole section in this new ebook that's titled uh, something along the lines of, instead of being a know-it-all, K-N-O-W,
Hmm.
be a know-it-all, G-N-O, know-it-all, which is the
Yep.
inner standing
Yep.
without having to go through the intellect.
Yeah.
And I have a meme around that and everything where it's basically just a guy hovered over a toilet and he's vomiting out of his head, and he doesn't even have a head, but all that's coming out of his body is just a stack of books.
Yep.
And I write a lot about not just not doing from a shamanic perspective, but not knowing.
Yeah.
So the importance of not knowing,
Yeah.
which is not the same thing as ignorance.
Yeah.
Very, very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah. I often ask myself, I have a whole list of, I call them power questions I've written down. There's probably 35 or 40 of them now that I've put together over decades. And some of them are things like, what can I unknow about this? What have I missed? What have I not noticed? What am I overthinking? Why am I even thinking? And because you can get trapped in these little mind loops, or big mind loops I get trapped in as well. But if I can just switch all that off, then you can become a much better observer again, because the moment you start to do the stuff in the head, I've noticed I'm not observing as much anymore.
That's right. That's right. That's definitely been my experience.
Mm.
Very powerful stuff. I think people, we live in a society, a world culture now that really prioritizes very surface level, fast information
Yeah.
and
And
uh,
distraction. It's all about distraction.
distraction, entertainment, distraction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. These things, these little black mirror things, they're incredible. For you want to take someone's energy, you can create any emotional state you want in seconds by displaying something, and then you've captured the energy that's been created. It's really interesting how they've gone about it.
Oh yeah, I write about that in this new book. It's hilarious.
Okay.
All in there. I have, I talk about cell phones and AI, all of it. It's all
Yeah.
part of the agenda. Here's where I differ from a lot of doom and gloomers, though, and black
Hmm.
pilled people. It's that I actually believe these are tools that, if you are in the right mind, which
Yep.
is kind of in the no mind, in the
Yeah.
not knowing and the
Yeah.
not doing in a way, you come from a place of power where you can hijack what's been hijacked, like the technology, and utilize it to broadcast your freedom message to all kinds of people who will benefit
Absolutely.
tremendously. And here's the amazing thing is that if just one person gets the dragon out of their head, well, that's great. Good for you. You go on and have a great existence, whatever.
Mm.
But if hundreds or thousands of people begin to do this, what you're doing is you're taking its energy back. The
Yeah.
energy that's stolen from you is coming back to you,
Yeah.
to people, and it gets weaker and weaker. And I think there comes a point where either it leaves or it changes so utterly that it becomes unrecognizable.
Yeah.
It becomes much more.
Basically, you're changing the terrain. Going back to
Yes,
terrain theory, you're changing the terrain,
you
and
are.
now the parasite's no longer required. So you get rid of its food source, and it can't stay put.
Yes, or if you want to look at it from a pleomorphic perspective, it actually transforms into
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah, 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 yeah.
beneficial bacteria, and it becomes part of your microbiome. And
Which
every
then suggests that if we had a hand in creating it in the first place, we had to go here through this place to get to where we have to go to next. It's all part of the journey we should be on.
and that's what I write about as well. That's a scream. That's a scream.
Isn't that an interesting conversation that's developing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fair. I mean, I have been blessed to have wonderful conversations with a
Mm,
lot of people since this book came out, but you're probably as aligned as anyone I've ever, sat down with and talked about this stuff.
thank you. I appreciate that. And it's nice to speak to you too, because there's only one or two people that I can start to get into the kind of level discussion that you and I are starting to have right now about stuff. Because a lot of other people go, okay. And in fact, there's a friend of mine, what did he describe me as? Someone said, boy, Adrian's really out in left field. And he laughed and went, no, no, no. He went through left field decades back and he just kept on fucking walking and he's in a different place now. And it sounds like
Uh,
you're in the same place.
yeah, yeah, and I'm still walking,
I am too. I'm stopped because the further I go, the more interesting it gets.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so to take that to the extreme in this new material, I'm basically proposing that as you pull in your energy, you take back your mind, you learn
Mhm,
how to project your consciousness to work on your dream body, you can create in the center of your being a powerful uh, gemstone-like source of energy, like almost a piezoelectric, but on a more hyperdimensional level. And that is the philosopher's stone down in your solar plexus as a man or in your womb as a woman.
mhm.
That helps explain why, according to a lot of shamans, women are actually a lot better at shamanism and this kind of thing because they have a larger storage area for energy and they can just use the whole thing. It's
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
Men
Yeah.
have this little tennis ball, like, place where they can create their philosopher's stone, but women can just, they can just turn into super powerful beings. But you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
need a massive energy source like this to go to the next step once you've fully created the egregore of your dream body. So you are an egregore creating the egregore of your dream body, and then when you choose to die consciously, you can basically step into your dream body powered by your philosopher's stone and sail off into eternity.
So then you wouldn't forget and you wouldn't get trapped in the same recycling back with the same nonsense again. That's an interesting thought.
No, you wouldn't at all. The in
Wonder
the
where
in the
that boat goes.
Yeah, well, it goes all over the place. It sails on the dark sea of awareness. That is a shamanic term that I
Yep.
utilize in all of this, and it sort of fits into the kind of hero's journey motif. This is
Yes.
in the new ebook, I actually distinguish between the traditional hero's journey, which has a number of steps and ultimately kind of goes in a circle where the hero
Hmm.
returns and gives gifts to the community, basically, in one way or
Hmm.
another.
Hmm.
And I contrast that with what I'm calling the ultimate hero's journey, which is a one-way ticket out of here.
Yes.
And your gift back to the community is almost just a fringe benefit of your empowerment, and you leave a trace in the morphic field for other people to follow.
Yes. Which makes more sense because everyone has to take their own journey. They can't be spoon fed. The being spoon fed is what's got so many people stuck where they're stuck right now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Yep.
I agree with that. That's why, you know, I know it's easy to look at the world and get freaked out by it and feel like there's so much unfairness and things that shouldn't be going on in a way, and yet we are in a kind of weird, I call it like a hard knocks classroom or even a dojo. It's like that scene in the Matrix with Morpheus just beating the crap out of Neo, trying to
Hmm.
wake him up to who he really is.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
Imagineer, you're this Imagineer. You can change the whole Matrix if you want
Yep.
to, but
Yep.
I'm gonna have to beat it out of you. And that's kind of what happens with the dragon, is
Hmm.
that it beats on us until we either succumb or we figure it out and transcend it.
Yeah. You sit down, you go within, you go quiet, and you will get the answers you seek because it starts to seek you when you start looking for it. That's what I found.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
very kind of Khalil Gibran-ish or Rumi-like. I like that.
Yeah. What was that? What was that phrase? What I've got books full. I've written down quotes and quotes and quotes, and I carry a much smaller one. So instead of wanting to go doom scrolling, if I've got a few minutes, I'll grab my book of quotes and I read a quote so I can think about it.
I like that. I like that
Um,
too. I make all kinds of like on my computer. I don't actually have a cell phone.
yeah,
Uh, but I in my notes function, I am always writing down quotes. I
yeah.
just
I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's along the lines of what goes unsought remains undiscovered.
mm, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. there is a this active, it's almost like you're pinging the field,
Yes.
when you do that, and then it begins to speak back to you.
Well, do you know what, Ewan? I think if you look, do you remember the old cell phone antennas on the cars, which would be a spiral and it'd come up as a rod with a ball on the top?
Oh, I remember those, yeah.
Okay, so if you took your spine out and your brain out and turned it side on, you'd have a ball on top and a big long rod. And that reminds me when I look at that to say, right, your job is to transmit a request and to ping the field and then wait for the answer. Don't try and figure it out. Wait, the answer will come.
Wow, wow, that's good. I like that.
And the other thing is when I'm transmitting, I can't receive. So if I want to receive more, I should transmit less.
Right. So once again, to like Will Rogers, never miss a good chance to shut up.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Well, what a pleasure this is. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when I began writing years ago
Hmm.
through various books, I could chart the struggle of each book. Do you know what I mean? Like how much thought and intellect and research and work and blood, sweat, and tears, the trauma and drama of the writing experience.
Hmm.
And it started out very high,
Yep.
and it's just gone down, 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 down to where it's not there at all now. I can write a full-length book in less time than, you might build a little shack in your backyard,
Hmm.
just really, really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. That's because you're open, you're receiving. Because it reminds me that like neural pathways and stuff, if you keep working it over and over again, it gets like a big superhighway of information. So you get a big pipe of data that can flow to you.
Yes, I'm always doing things to help with neuroplasticity one way or
Yes.
another.
Yep.
Learning new things that are useful to me, like movement and,
Hmm.
not just data for data's sake, not just conspiracy for conspiracy's sake or truth for truth's sake, but things that I have a use for.
Yeah. Well, I think the movement, everything. I take a lot of time in my course on anti-aging, which is really just about if you use your body the way it's designed to be used, and also you use your mind how I think it was designed to be used, and you nourish it properly, and you get the toxins out. You don't take too many toxins back in. You then strengthen that connection to the field because you're starting to feel it properly. When your body's all full of shit, you can't sense that connection. You slow it down. So, as much as it's anti-aging, I think it's just a correction back to our natural state.
Mm. That's a real demystification. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think we overthink longevity and all kinds of things. It's just too complicated,
Yeah.
I think it is a lot simpler than that. And another thing I think it is a lot of not just not doing or not knowing, but also just not caring. Like I think
Exactly.
about, I know this is funny, but I can't tell you in my life how many people I have met who ate whatever they wanted to, did whatever they wanted to, smoked, drank, didn't matter, whatever, and lived to, they died prematurely at about 95. It's absolutely
But they
insane.
had a damn good time doing it.
And they had a damn good time doing it. So there's got to be, for me, some happy medium between the healthy approach to living and just walking on the wild side a little bit, because otherwise it gets boring.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've pinpointed as being critical to that, from my viewpoint, is it's more important about how you feel about what it is you're doing than the thing you're actually doing. So if you are partaking in alcohol, as an example, but you're coming at it because you feel like shit and you're pissed off, that will have a bad impact on you. Whereas if you're in a really great place and you're doing it just to continue the enjoyment, you're having a great fun, you're feeling, love, connected, all the rest of it, that's a lot less damaging to you. So I think it's how you feel going into it. If you think it's going to be bad for you, don't do it. If you think you're going to have a riot doing it, maybe you should.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on
Yeah.
that. Absolutely, absolutely. And then there's the intuition
Yeah.
and,
Trust
and
that.
the moderation's not a bad idea, especially after lack of moderation.
I think we shouldn't have love, money, happiness, and joy in moderation at all. We should have a full load of that.
Oh yeah, yeah, amen to that. That's true. Um, What are your current projects?
Well, marketing the course now is the big one. It took me such a long time to build that and to put it together. It was really funny how that came about because if you go back historically, I watched my mother get basically butchered and tortured by the medical mafia
Hmm.
with cancer, and then she died, and I trusted them, and that really broke me up. Then there was some other events leading me to having a breakdown. So she died, I got divorced, and there was another big thing that happened all in the space of 3 months, and that basically,
Oh my goodness.
well, no, it's good because it pushed me to a place that I would never have got to.
Right.
And it was a great test, and it was a dark night of the soul that for me went on for about 22 years, I suppose.
Wow.
And it was only February last year that I had a breakthrough and I suddenly went, holy shit, I know what I've done to myself. I know why I've been doing it. I know how I've been doing it. I know what to do to correct it. And it was so
Hmm.
all during like the whole COVID nonsense that I started to put more and more content out about health because I thought the only thing I can think of to counteract this is to actually let people know what's going on and how they can look after themselves and they don't need all this other shit. And I got really good feedback from so many people about individual things. I've got thousands and thousands of testimonials, usually before the videos got taken down off YouTube for pointing out a truth or something. I've had 100, 160 taken down now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little more careful about what I put up and point them towards other platforms. Say, look, if you want the rest of this, you need to jack over here and have a look because that's where I can
Right.
tell you about it. But that led me to thinking, what would happen if I'm 60 now. What would happen if I could take all the information and put it into one spot? Not just the book I wrote, but actually put together something that could help people of my age that don't really understand much about what's going on and starting to recognize they've got problems, that they maybe are stuck on the medical merry-go-round of drugs and treatments and all the rest of it, they want to step off. So that's really why I created that course. So that I could just say, look, here it is in a very logical, structured way. You can take whichever bits of you want. You don't have to take any of it. You can do. Have a run with it and see how it helps you. So the project now is just to market that and get it in front of as many people as I can to help as many people as I can help.
Well, let me ask you, Adrian, have you thought about doing a Substack?
It's funny. I was looking at Dawn's and Amanda's, and I was speaking to Amanda Volmer the other day. That's probably something I should look at doing. Yeah.
Well, the one of the nice things that I keep inviting people into my world, like Dawn, Miguel Connor has a new book I love called The Occult Elvis, and he just got over on Substack, and it's a wonderful place for mutually supporting other writers on the wavelength, so
Hmm.
that like you can obviously share other people's work, but if you did any like this interview, for example, if I were to publish this interview on my Substack and you were on Substack, I could actually have you be the co-author and you would sign off on that, of course.
Hmm.
And then basically it doubles the exposure for the work. And then we also can recommend people and increase just the number of subscribers. I just
Hmm.
think it's nice. It's a very nice kind of like um, again, using that word Aquarian model for helping each other, which you don't always see on other platforms.
Hmm. Okay, I'll get on that tomorrow. Thank you.
So look me up when you come over there. It's solluckman.substack.com. So
Yeah,
make sure you say hello and I can recommend your Substack.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'll have a dig around and get myself familiar with it.
Yeah, it's a tiny bit of a learning curve, but really it's got a tremendous amount of functionality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I can strip and rebuild cars, head for scrap yards, and build houses and software. Hopefully I can find my way around it. Fingers crossed.
Oh, I think you're a shoe in.
Hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's right. I know. I'm not a techie person at all, so I have a partner who is, and she has, saved me. So
Perhaps you saved her by giving her that to do.
maybe, yeah. I mean, she said things like that before. That there is a kind of been a help and meaning exchange there.
Everyone has a part to play. We're all. What's the way to put that? I've lost my train of thought on that. Well, basically, if we're in the grand play of life, the parts I'm playing impact the other people around me and vice versa. And without the part I'm playing, they wouldn't have their part and so on. So it's like a jigsaw, isn't it? Every piece is needed in the jigsaw, otherwise it's not the whole picture.
Right. I was thinking of like something like symbiotic, a
Yeah,
symbiotic relationship where
yeah.
everyone's actually contributing to the larger organism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like I have some lyrics I wrote recently, and it's sort of about being an inner alchemist, and
hmm.
it's like if you don't get it, get off my list.
Yeah. They say, how did you get on this list anyway? I never invited you. But then I must have done at some level. So,
Yeah, at some level, right? You attracted that.
yeah.
It's just good, the whole personal boundaries thing, and it's another
But
thing
see,
I really focus on a lot, in this new material. It's just,
yeah.
because um we can't be wishy-washy and porous and expect our energy levels to increase because we're always going to be harvested if we do that. We actually have to be very much like consciousness warriors for
Yeah.
at least a while, where we can get some of this stuff off of our backs.
Well, I think attention warriors is a good one as well. A good way to think of it. If you had a magic wand that whatever you pointed at, you would get more of, you'd be really careful where you pointed that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yep, yep. There's a Peace Pilgrim quote
Yeah.
that I use that's, if and I don't fully subscribe to this idea because she's basically talking about ignoring negativity in a way, but she's like, if you realize how powerful your thoughts are, you would just never think another negative thought.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
You'd
lo-
also be very careful about what you attach I am to,
hmm,
because you're making a declarative statement about your identity, and that is the most powerful thing in the human psyche. So, you know, you got to be so careful with that because it will become what you become whatever you attach it to with emotion. That's
hmm,
what I've found. So I've got long lists of I ams written out, read them every day. During the course of the day, I check in and say, what I am I actually living right now? Because I might not be getting, if I'm not getting the results I want, I'm attached to the wrong I am. What do I need to correct? And I go to bed at night and I think about them as well. So, and that's made such a profound impact on my world because you start to engineer where your attention is at all times. Now, sure,
that's
you can't do it constantly, Sol, but you can do. The more intentional I get with it, the better results I get.
yeah, that's a very good practice. Is
Mm.
that part of your course?
No, that's something. It's something I didn't put in there. I felt it was too advanced. What I tried to do with the course, and I'm thinking about a follow-on. I want to do a workshop where people can like a whole weekend together or several weekends during the year. But what I tried to do, the Pareto principle, the 20% of causes get 80% of the effects. So the little bits that get the big hits. The course was in 7 areas. What are the Pareto, the 2080s in all of them that I can actually say to people, look, do this, do this, do this, do this. That will compound and have this big impact here. Now, in this area, you can do this in this area so that people get, because one thing I've noticed with people over the years is they want quick fixes. That's why they take pills. That's why they jab themselves with, injections and stuff. They want a quick fix. So if I can give them a quick fix, that's great. The I am thing, I think, would be a separate course all on its own.
Right on, right on. Well, maybe you'll have a separate, uh, subscription for
Yeah.
advanced students over on your Substack or something like that, and have
Yeah.
that be a way of attracting a different readership, different clientele.
Yeah. Well, I did it with a friend of mine a while back where he could not get his life in order. And I said, just write down the answer to these things. What do you say about I am? Whenever you notice you say I am, I've noticed in your conversations, and we wrote them all out, and they were so negative. And I said, well, just change them all. Just do the 180-degree opposite. Write the opposite down and just read it every day and keep reading it and reading it, reading it until you believe it. And he's completely turned his life around.
That's beautiful. You can take that same principle in the projectionist work that
Mm.
I'm doing and actually go in and visualize those I ams
Yep.
in your mental construct
Yeah.
and actually see yourself living those I ams in your dream body.
That's exactly right. Yep. And because then you'll start to believe it. And when it feels completely natural, because it's so familiar, because you've done it so often, you will notice you're living that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And again, it's back to that whole um well, I use the analogy of the Ouroboros, this a
Yeah.
serpent consuming its own tail, where we
Yes.
are self-creating
Yes.
constantly, and it's just a big circle.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really interesting. That's like fasting and you get autophagy because you're digesting yourself to make you stronger.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's
Yeah.
very similar. Yeah, because the whole idea, even with the Ouroboros, is that it's not just creating, it's also destroying.
Yes.
It can be consuming itself as well. So it can
Yeah.
go either way, and either way can be useful.
Yes. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. That's an interesting thing. That's got me thinking about a whole bunch of other stuff now.
Well, I took that symbol as the symbol of pragmalchemy. And so when we developed, my partner Lee and I developed these incredible blocks for
Hmm.
doing the myofascial decompression work that is part of this series of exercises. We
Hmm.
called it the Ouroboros, and we took uh, the symbol of the Ouroboros and had that burned on it with onto the blocks.
Hmm.
You know, so it's very very cool. So you have your Ouroboros, and that's your touchstone. It allows you to go in to get out. So you can like lie on it in your psoas area, you know,
Hmm.
and achieve amazing results. But with that one little exercise, just lying on this block,
Hmm.
but that also teach how to breathe and visualize
Hmm.
to increase your energy and then begin storing it in your cauldron area so that it can become a philosopher's stone.
Hmm. Hmm. That's interesting. I have a couple of things. I have a like a mat I stand on, which is they're not needles, but they're very very sharp, and they stimulate all of the points in your feet. You stand on
All the
that for 10 minutes.
acupressure.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, there's hundreds of them that you stand on. It takes, it's uncomfortable getting on. It's even more uncomfortable getting off. But the amount of energy rush you get is incredible. And I also then have like a mat and a pillow, which has got sharpened like nutshells on it that you lie on, which is almost like lying on a bed of needles.
Oh,
And
wow.
that does some really interesting things to your energy as well. And it's also a really good place. You will focus just on that. Your mind won't wander.
That's good.
So it's an interesting way of really stilling your mind for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, the block has that effect as well because I
Yeah.
mean, you know, we're talking about a significant yoga like yoga block like thing, you know,
Hmm.
that is just basically pressing way into you. You can
Yes.
stand on it, and that's also very painful if you've never done it in the
Yeah.
beginning, you know, on your on different pressure points on your feet. You can
Yeah.
absolutely decompress the heck out of those fascia and get a lot of very strange full body releases and energy rushes that can kind of come up through you. It's almost like it's channeling Kundalini up through your feet. I actually have an exercise that I'm
Mm.
working publishing called Quetzalcoatl Rising, and it's this exact move where you stand on the block
Mm.
and you breathe in the energy of the earth up through your body as Kundalini, all
Mm.
the way up through your upper body and then down into your cauldron, and you store it there.
Mm. Mm. That's interesting. I'm going to try that because I do another one where I breathe stuff down through my head and cleanse my entire body and wash away any negative. And also, I've been more recently using it and just saying to myself, any unusual programs that aren't supportive can get moved out of the way. But at the same time, from the earth, and I bring up all useful programs that will replace them.
Hmm.
In
Hmm.
my head, because I think we are very much, it feels to me, certainly in the meditations, that we're running a whole series of programs.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I
And
get in.
and with programs, the program will just run whatever corrupted data's in it. So if you clean the program up, you get a better output, garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow, there's so many little pieces of that. If
Mm.
you end up reading this new book, you'll learn about the fragmentary body as kind of the ultimate program from the operating system that we took on. And it
Mm.
basically creates a massive energy rift in your second chakra area.
Mm.
That is also where you are energetically susceptible to both regular parasites and etheric parasites. And so you can change the program, you can actually delete it,
Mm.
and it will seal that energy rift in your bioenergy field.
Mm. See, this is really interesting because I've not read stuff like this before. This is just stuff I've felt as I've done the work on myself. So it's interesting to hear it put into words. So it's like you're I'm going to read that because it feels like you've got a tool bag there where I can look and go, oh, I know what to do with that tool, and that tool. I've been looking for them.
Yeah, yeah. Some people have said that, or
Yeah,
things like that, you know.
yeah.
That actually grew out of the regenetics work, which was when I got into an autoimmune condition way back when
Hmm.
I used to heal myself, and the weird fringe benefit of that process was the sealing of this fragmentary body. And I felt it as it was happening, and it was extraordinary. And now it's really the hallmark of the regenetics method. It's a form of sound healing that basically creates these profoundly epigenetic effects so that
Mm.
you detox, and all of these things begin to just kind of self-correct over about a 9 month period.
Mhm. Well, that's what we're designed to do. That's what I talk about in my course. Your body knows how to fix itself. If you've had a cut, a broken bone, anything, and it fixes itself, your body knows what to do. You've got to, sometimes you need to help it. More often than not, you just need to get out of the way.
Oh, I agree with that. The getting
Yeah.
out of the way is huge. And like you were saying earlier, the removal of these programs or scripts that were
Yep.
run,
Yep.
it's a big deal because those are what keep everything in place. I mean,
Yeah.
this works at the level of nerve entrapment. If you want to look at it physically, I mean, there's ways of kind of resetting that and letting the structure go back to a more harmonized posture
Hmm.
that works physically, but it also works mentally and energetically.
Oh, yeah. Well, everything's tied together. You can't just have one. You have to work across all areas of it to make it work properly. That's why, people can be in the sort of right direction when they're trying to heal themselves. But if they're ignoring the etheric stuff, if they're ignoring the emotional component, the physical component, they're not really going to get all the way across the line because there's still problems that they're not addressing. They think, well, I'll just fix that. No, it's not just that. It's all these things.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I think that the ultimate cause of illness is just unfulfilled potential, and that what we're really being poked and prodded to do by some aspect of consciousness or our unconscious mind is to become more of who we are and to connect with that totality. And when we don't do that, there's this really intense line by Jung in one of his writings where he said, that the universe has is amazing, and how quickly it can snuff out a meaningless existence.
Yeah, yeah, I'd go with that. Yeah. And if you're cutting yourself off from the life force that's trying to flow through you by whatever means, emotionally, physically, or whatever, you're going to have a hard time with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I don't think it's ever too late, but I do
No.
feel like that by the same token, the shamans that I really respect often suggest that you stay in constant contact with your death, have it on your shoulder, be a friend with it, and let it be a teacher and a constant spur to action or inaction, as the case may be,
Hmm.
so that you are growing and becoming at full steam ahead.
Hmm. Mm. It's interesting, speaking about speed and also doing nothing. One of the things that I've noticed in my life is that I used to just charge into doing everything and I'd be like a whirlwind going through stuff. And, a lot of stuff happens that way. But I've noticed something as I've got older and a bit smarter, hopefully, is that the better I feel about the action I'm going to take, the better the outcome's going to be because the action will be more appropriate. So I spend more time trying to align with that feeling place. And more often than not, it's like if I'm not sure which way to go, I just come to a complete stop. And I stop and I wait until the answer becomes more obvious, where I can feel, actually, you know what, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I like that. I think we could extrapolate that to just having conversations and
Yeah.
not feeling we always have to have a response or an
Yeah.
answer, or we don't always have to react. I'm a big believer in the power of silence, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's extremely powerful, not just individually, but in relationships, in setting boundaries, in conflict resolution.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know that the former French president, Charles de Gaulle, he said that silence is the most powerful weapon,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
period.
Yep. Yep. And it's a tricky one because a lot of people aren't comfortable with it.
Right. It's true.
So I wonder why.
I think that's a script. I
Hmm.
think it's part of the scripting that we have to externalize and verbalize. That's part of the dragon's operating system. It keeps us in a kind of almost like a samskara, a groove or a rut of having to perform, having to have the answer, having to intellectualize. We need to be able to trot out a very eloquent dissertation of our feelings at a dinner party, instead of just say nothing.
Mm, mm. No, that's good. I like that. That's good. That's where meditation is great too, because you don't say anything then.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
In fact, if you want to have a really interesting meeting with someone, what I've found is put myself into a really deep meditative state and then go to the meeting and hold myself there during the meeting. Because what I found happens is I say very little, but what I say has impact and it's meaningful.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. That's nice. That's really, really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you make me think of this notion of dreaming awake.
Hmm.
You're basically just lucid dreaming, but
Hmm.
you're awake doing it, and you
Yeah.
can just be fully functional in that state.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what we're doing?
I think this whole conversation has been like that, frankly.
I think our entire lives are.
Well, certainly, I think we're dreaming. I don't think we're necessarily lucid dreaming our way through our lives, but
No.
yeah.
Well, it's, yeah, you're right. I'm very fortunate. If I have dreams that I don't like the way they're going at night, I can either modify them, or if I'm not able to modify them, I can wake myself up, which I've been able to do that for decades, which is really cool. But I think if you approach your life with more intention, maybe that's the lucid side of the dream.
Mm, yes.
Because it strikes me, Sol, that if you don't know what it is you want to do and where you're headed, you'll get moved along by whatever has an idea of where it wants to take you, if that makes sense.
Mm,
In other words, I ask myself a lot during the course of the day, am I driving the bus or am I a passenger on the bus?
yeah. Back to the player versus the
That's right. Yeah.
but at the same time, I would say this, that you can also not know what you're
Yep.
doing, and
Oh yeah.
you can ping the field and wait for a response
Yep.
without necessarily taking action if you are uncertain. And that's a perfectly reasonable course of action or
Oh yeah.
inaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And why not ping the field to ping the higher part of yourself that's in the field so you get guidance from a different viewpoint?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely see reality such as it is as being fractal, so that
Hmm.
you go up the spiral a few times. In fact, that's the cover of my new ebook. It's a spiral series of doors.
Hmm.
And you get, someone's leaning over the railing of their fire escape, looking down at you going, "Hey, turn to the left,"
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting you said spiral. When you look at nature, everything is a vortex. Everything, all the water, even when you go for a pee, if you look, it wants to go into a spiral. Rivers spiral, your breath spirals. If you can see condensation in your breath when it's cold, it comes out, and there's vortexes in that. Everything is vortical.
Oh, absolutely. Even the hair on the head is a
Yeah, yeah,
spiral.
yeah.
It's amazing. There's a great book I've recommended that people read a number of times. Jeff Ward wrote a book on spiral, and
Hmm.
it's brilliant, and it just goes into example after example after example of this kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah. I
G
first.
Geoff, Jeff Ward or Jeffrey Ward.
Mhm. Yeah, I first came across it when I was studying a lot of work on Victor Schauberger.
Oh yeah,
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 really interesting stuff.
brilliant, brilliant. Well,
Yeah.
he was actually into this idea that um, the spiral was related to the free energy. He was
Yep.
looking at fish and how they would kind of levitate up, like
Yep.
salmon swimming upstream, and how does that even work? It doesn't look like it should be possible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, anti-gravity. And then that led on to Viktor Grabenikov. That was interesting stuff too.
Oh, I write about him in my novel Snooze and his scooter. Yeah, so he's making the scooter with these chitin shells and
That's
putting them
right.
on
Yeah.
the scooter and all of that stuff. Yeah, I actually immortalized that scooter in a work of literature.
Fantastic. Well done, you. You're one of the few people I've mentioned that name to that knows it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. It's a funny, funny little wavelength we're on.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Excellent stuff. Would you be open to another discussion sometime in a few months?
Yeah, I'd love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I'd really like that too. And thank you so much for that conversation. It's been very It's been uplifting for me to speak to someone, you know, straight on without having to think, am I going too far with this? And just say, look, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, and you get it. So that's been really cool. So thank you for that as well.
Well, back at you. I could have said exactly the same thing. I'm glad. I want to thank Dawn for putting
Mm.
us in touch again. I feel like there was some divine timing with all of that.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. That's really awesome. What I'll do, Sol, is I'll get this edited up. I can't do it tomorrow. I've got to pop up and fix my daughter's car, which is it's a 230-mile round trip to go and fix a fault. But I built the car for her, so I should go and fix it.
Right.
But I'll get this edited up and then I'll send it across to you so you can publish and do what you want with it as well.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll happily link over to your world so we
I
can
appreciate that.
follow.
Thank you. And I'll get a Substack thing. I'll get researched on that, get it set up, and I'll hook you up on there as well.
Well, reach out to me when you're on there if you have any questions. I'll answer them if I can.
Very grateful to you. Thank you, my brother.
Back at you. Back at you. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. I'll speak to you soon, man. Take care.
All right. Happy road trip.
Thank you. Bye bye.